Good afternoon. Welcome to the Long Live Third Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press, Inc., a third parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Today I read the case Libertarian Party of Illinois versus Scholz, 872 F3D 518, Court of Appeals, 7th Circuit, 2017. Friends, when you're ready for third party wisdom, push that button to get this podcast rolling. Once again, we return to Illinois. We did another case involving Illinois ballot access. And the issue is a similar law here. So let's read about what happened. It says, quote, Illinois law prevents political parties from fielding candidates on election ballots unless they meet certain conditions. One condition is known as the full slate requirement. If a party hasn't attained sufficient voter support in past elections, it must field candidates for all offices on the ballot in the political subdivision in which it wishes to compete. So in the 2012 election, the Libertarian Party of Illinois could field a candidate for county auditor in Kane County only if it also proposed candidates for circuit clerk, recorder, prosecutor, coroner, board chairman, and school superintendent. In suit under 42 U.S.C. 1983, the Libertarian Party argues that the full slate requirement violates its right of political association under the First and 14th Amendments. The district judge agreed and entered judgment invalidating the requirement. On appeal, Illinois contends that the full slate requirement is justified by its interest in political stability, preventing ballot overcrowding, and avoiding voter confusion. End quote. First of all, it's good that the district judge ruled in favor of third parties the first time around. So that's a good start for our friends. I don't know about you. Second of all, I don't like this law. I'm sure you don't either. It is quite the law. Imagine having to do all that. From what it sounds like, we third parties have to face a lot of barriers to get on the ballot in the first place, in even the best of conditions. So having those extra requirements are hoops to jump through that you couldn't imagine. So how did this case fare for our friends? Was this Court of Appeals sympathetic to the district court's ruling, or did they side with Illinois? I used to live in Illinois, and in fact, the first third party I joined was the Libertarian Party. So what was the first political party you joined if you lived in Illinois or elsewhere? Let me know. They discuss the basic requirements to get on the ballot, number of signatures, percentage of votes, and then they devote the bulk of their case to discussing this particular law. As they say, quote, it isn't simply that the party couldn't run its candidate for county auditor in the 2012 election. It's that Illinois law imposes a burdensome condition on the party's exercise of its right of political association, and that is the party's injury is its inability to access the ballot unless it fields a full slate of candidates, end quote. That unless part wasn't emphasized by me, it was emphasized in the record. Let's get back to that political association. Our friends at the Libertarian Party invoked the First and 14th Amendment like I've seen again and again in these ballot access trials. So good job, Libertarian Party, invoking those great amendments. They talk about how important the First Amendment is and how it applies to ballot access. They say the First Amendment gives one the right to have political parties and to get on the ballot. I like that reasoning. I like it a lot. Want to hear some more wisdom? They say the following, quote, we have little difficulty concluding that the full slate requirement severely burdens the First Amendment rights of minor parties, their members, and voters. As a condition for ballot access, the requirement forces minor parties to find and recruit candidates for races they want nothing to do with. In many instances, the minor party must locate candidates for relatively obscure offices like county recorder or coroner. Moreover, in order to support candidates genuinely interested in winning, Illinois assures us that the full slate requirement isn't meant to produce sham candidacies. A party must devote to each candidate funding and other resources necessary to operate a full-fledged campaign. To take the example of Fox's candidacy for Kane County Auditor, running a fully funded campaign for each Kane County office would have increased the Libertarian Party's cost sevenfold. End quote. These judges are thinking about stuff we may not have thought about on our own. So that is great. Sevenfold. Yes, they are right that this is creating an absurd situation where, despite the intentions of the law, what it requires people to do is to run for all these offices, whether the candidate is good or not. Just, we need somebody to run for county dog catcher, which is everyone's favorite example to use. So anyone, we'll take anyone. So that is not a good situation, is it not, my friends? They continue, they say, quote, although a party's failure to submit a full slate doesn't prevent the candidate from accessing the ballot as independent, party-affiliated campaigns, independent campaigns are entirely different, and neither is a satisfactory substitute for the other. End quote. In a recent social media post as of this podcast, when this podcast comes out, it won't be as recent, I posed a question: what advantages does one have for running as a third-party candidate versus an independent candidate? Because in one of our other cases, in that case it was, I believe it was Brown versus Bayless, where Harry Brown was not approved by the Arizona Libertarian Party, so he had to run as an independent in that state only. But in most of the other states, he got to run under the ballot. So that made me wonder, what are the advantages of running as a political party and as a third party and as versus running as an independent? They do thinking for us here. They say, quote, to give just one example, a party loyal who must run an independent campaign is denied the ability to quickly communicate information about his views and values through association with his party. End quote. Good thinking. What about you? What advantages do you see of running as a third party versus running as an independent candidate? Fortunately here, they're not buying the arguments the state of Illinois is using. And you want to hear some more wisdom? They say, quote, by creating unwanted candidacies, the requirement increases political instability, ballot overcrowding, and voter confusion. End quote. Once again, when I emphasize increases, it wasn't my selection, it was in the record. So they want to emphasize that point. That's an argument these states are bringing again and again in these trials, that the ballot access laws prevent political instability, ballot overcrowding, and voter confusion. So this court is saying, at least in this particular case, the law here is not doing that, it's doing the opposite. As they say, quote, whatever its aim, the requirement forces a minor party to field unserious candidates as a condition of nominating a truly committed candidate. The Libertarian Party, for example, might have filed the 6 other Kane County slots with Fox's friends or relatives. In reality, then, the full slate requirement does not ensure that only parties with a modicum of support reach the ballot. Instead, it ensures that only minor parties on the ballot are those that have strong support or are willing and able to find enough frivolous candidates to comply with the law. End quote. They put candidates in scare quotes. And scare quotes. They are saying here that if you have to find any candidate just to have a full slate, that's not a true candidate. the person might not be motivated. You might not be motivated to support them. So it's not a good situation. They make a great point about having, if you have to get a full slate, you might resort to nepotism. And we don't want that, do we? They also say, quote, finally, the full slate requirement doesn't prevent ballot overcrowding or voter confusion. To the contrary, it clutters the ballot with numerous candidates who wouldn't otherwise run and who may or may not be sincerely interested in public office. End quote. Again, that's a wise point here. I like how these judges are thinking. In a lot of these cases, we don't get much ground, but here, it's the momentum is tremendous. They're seeing our side, and they're making the case for us. So this is what we want to see. So what's this all leading up to? A victory for our side or defeat for our side? Let's read. It says, quote, the full slate requirement severely burdens fundamental constitutional rights and is not narrowly tailored to a compelling state interest. We affirm the judgment of the district court. End quote. Friends, that is a victory. So let us rejoice. Let us rejoice. Let us rejoice. We have stuff to think about. This case gives us stuff to ponder and reflect upon. So let us do that, and let us keep favoring ballot access for third parties. Long live third parties. Goodbye.